The term radiant energy did not exist in the first century. It's possible that we know too much about it. Is it possible that the Roman legion told Matthew that there was a tremendous burst of white light? The stone went sailing over their heads. Jesus came out, and because the women had seen angels and Matthew believed the women, maybe he thought the Romans did? I don't know. But try this on for size. In Middle Eastern night, there's no pollution in southern Israel even today. There are nights when the stars are bigger than saucers. No rain at this time of year. Dead silence. Nobody in their right mind would go anywhere near the garden. The body very thoroughly dead, wrapped in a sheet, lying on some kind of a slab. The Romans were not asleep. Polybius said, and he was no Christian, that they would be checked every hour and a half maximum by a centurion to make sure that they were awake and on duty. They would probably have been bored to tears, but they'd have been leaning on their spears looking for trouble. Suddenly something, and science has no hope of ever proving what it was. One nuke said, "Give it up. We just don't understand the physics of a miracle." Something within that body triggers the most unbelievable burst of radiant energy ever known. Instantaneously heated to something over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, any nuke is going to tell you that the air in that tomb, which should have been cold and stale and dead and damp after 3 days of being sealed up, heated that high, that rapidly, would have to expand at least 3 to 5 psi, pounds per square inch. They'll also tell you that that's the principle of a nuclear bomb, that mountain would vanish and take most or all of Jerusalem along with it, if the tomb were tightly corked. But it wasn't. That huge boulder at the mouth of the tomb would have been like a paper cap on the end of a glass milk bottle. That's seismus, and this is a legitimate translation which no one could possibly have made before 1979. That shock wave, or that thermal wind, would have hit that rock and lifted it right over the head of the Roman god. Of course they went catatonic. They froze. They became like dead men. So would every man in this room, including me, when something like that happened. Then when he came walking out of the tomb, apparently they became non-catatonic. They began to put one foot in front of the other just as rapidly as they could do it, and who wouldn't? They checked out of that piece of real estate. And it's interesting that the pride of the Roman legion did not report to their own centurion in Antonia. They checked in with a Jewish high priest. Now, someone said there's 2 good reasons. Number 1, who wants to get converted to instantaneous dog food? Number 2, when something like that happens, you find the nearest priest regardless of what his denomination is. You got problems. Over the centuries, theologians have often said that the gospel writer John had a horrible Greek vocabulary. He had picked the wrong word to describe the movement of the stone. Until today, no translator ever considered the legitimate translation wind. There was never a wind big enough to move a 3,000-pound rock. There isn't a person in this room tonight who could deny that there is such a wind. You cannot ignore that translation anymore. It's at least got to be checked out. They never knew what to do with the word airu that John used to describe the movement of the stone. Until today, a seismist could only roll a stone that big. Airu has no connotation to rolled. It means picked up, lifted, moved, physically carried, or sailed away. Today it looks as if John's vocabulary wasn't that bad, because wherever the stone came down, it sure as heck was not next to the entrance of the tomb. And that's the shroud. And what does it mean? If you're like me, Pastor A, the only people I really know in this room, nothing. I didn't need this cloth 6 years ago. I don't need it today. To risk an extremely lousy pun, my faith isn't all wrapped up in a sheet. But I was traveling over in the city, New York, not long ago with one of the team. I don't want to identify him. Let him tell his own story. But just accept, if you can, the fact that you can read his name in every encyclopedia in the world today. Somewhere along that rather wild ride, the man with me said, "Paul, all of our lives we've worshipped a God called science. We believed only what we could see and what we could touch, nothing more. All of a sudden now it's our God, science, that's saying that Jesus is Lord. And what in the heck do you do with that?" He said, it isn't that we want to believe, but either we have to accept the fact that it's not us, it's our equipment that's saying that this is Jesus of Nazareth and he was resurrected, or we have to scrap the most sophisticated equipment the world has, unless Russia's got something better, and we doubt it, because it's not us, it's the equipment. And if that's true, this whole thing's like a computer, 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 2 is 4. If that's true, it doesn't mean a blessed thing what my wife believes. It's what the heck am I going to do with it? Well, he did. I prayed with him. Let me show you something. I've got to say that this is not an official statement of the Shroud of Turin research project. Neither, of course, is an unofficial statement. I'm only showing you something that I see. This is the back of a man that's been skinned alive the hard way. I've made my point. He's lying with a dead weight of 155 pounds pressed on a piece of linen cloth. He must have been glued to it. Everybody in this room has cut themselves at least once and put a bandage on it, or Band-Aid. And you know blood sticks. I actually found one tribe in New Guinea that glues their drum heads on with human blood. It's that strong. Some of us are old enough to have had a bandage ripped off, either accidentally or deliberately by a doctor. Two things happen every single time. Number one, you scream bloody murder. It hurts. Number two, you bleed because you ripped the clots off. Yet look at this. Every wound is unique and distinct. The doctors say that it's just as easy to do a forensic examination on these two photographs as it is an actual corpse. They're that clear. You can see, we know how many men were involved because the strokes proceed from lateral to medial, indicating two people coming from different directions. We know that one man was taller than the other. His arm was longer. He could reach further. He was a lot nastier. He enjoyed cutting up the front of the body. You can see the bar of metal connecting the dumbbell-shaped pieces of lead. You can see where they were curving around to get the front of the body. They missed his legs with the balls of lead. I don't think they were aiming at his legs. The lashes sliced through the thighs like razor blades, cutting him to the bone. The serum and plasma have separated, forms a tiny halo around each drop of blood, fluorescing precisely the way blood should fluoresce on linen cloth. What I'm saying is that there is no conceivable way that this cloth could have been taken off of the body of the man that was in it without destroying it. It should have been torn to shreds. There should be holes in it. And yet, under 300 power magnification, there isn't a broken microfiber. Do you have a brainstorm? I'm serious. We could use one. Yes, you could say possibly that his body turned into dust. It blew away, left an empty sheet, except that one Italian scientist managed to do the impossible. He had used a laboratory vacuum cleaner. He took a dust sample from every 6-inch grid on the cloth. In less than 3 years, he had identified every fleck of dust that was on the cloth and put a tag on it. He found some rather incredible things: gold, silver, rosin. At some point in history, somebody had held a torch over the cloth, examined it by torchlight. Rosin dripped on the cloth and burned through 42 layers, or burned through some extra holes in it. I got my fires mixed up. But there was nothing on this cloth that could have been produced by the human body in either life or death except the blood. No decavern, no decay, no flesh, no body rot. Israel is a subtropical climate. The last time I was there, it was November. The temperature was still over 90 degrees in Tel Aviv. At that temperature, a body will begin to decay in something less than 4 days. The fact that there is no decavern on this cloth would seem to indicate that the cloth and the body had been separated in something less than 4 days. 3 maybe? But it wasn't separated. Again, got a bright idea? Unless you want to use a New Testament word called resurrection. I am not making a statement of fact. I'm only asking a question. Could it be at all conceivable that maybe for a millisecond of time, his body turned into physical body, shifted forms of energy? Our body is energy of a type. Shifted forms of energy became pure energy, maybe a blue-white light, passed through the cloth, scorching an image on it, triggering the chain reaction that we call the resurrection, expanding the air, blowing the stone away, dissipating the heat, providing an exit, totally lapse time, 1/1000th of a second or less. But boy, does it look suspicious. Pastor, check me out, because I'm going to use the Bible. You keep me from becoming apostate.